Mike can join us when he's here. Oh, there we go. We are live.
Right.
We are live. Right, Matt.
Which one?
Which one?
We were literally just saying how we get confused. I don't know how, because he's got loads more hair than I have. So I honestly don't know how we're going to go to that. He's much better looking as well. So.
But this is the Matt chat that we were speaking of the other day.
It was. It was. They enjoyed that little Matt chat, didn't they?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed Matt talks to Matt and Matt repeats it to Matt. I loved that. It was great.
Matt repeats it to Matt.
And now
Mike.
Hello, Mike.
Joining us.
Hello. Sorry for a couple of minutes late.
No, you're all right. You're all right. It takes a little bit of time for people to realise we're live. So perfect timing. Is that an avocado over your left shoulder?
It certainly is. The main man.
Oh, yeah.
Your background game is pretty weak, Mike, actually. I've got to say. It's got a prison cell vibe. But
it actually is. It's like a witness protection sort of thing. So, yeah, I have to scarf her off. Now I can't put the avocado back, but it's all good. I'm branded, so it's all good.
You are on brand. How are we doing? How is everyone? It's been crazy,
Good.
right? The last kind of week and a half's been mental.
Mental. I mean, everything that went on last week, it's been nuts. I mean, there still seems to be a lot of buyer confidence out there, in truth, even with everything going on. I think just accept the fact that mortgages are where they are now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's all going. I mean, that was quite serious to kick us off, Matt. I like that. You went straight in.
Straight in there.
Straight in the
And what seems to be fair, it's what everybody's thinking about, isn't it? It's every question I get asked from every buyer.
Yeah.
Every buyer, every seller, it's like the first thing that comes out and asks, well, what do you think's going to happen with the property market? I'm like, wow, jumping deep straight away. Why not? So I thought, why not kick it off that way with our chat?
Do you take your crystal ball out on valuations?
What's that?
Do you take that crystal ball out on valuations?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I said, if I knew, I'd be a very rich man. And I'm not a very rich man, so I don't know.
Ah, you're too modest, mate.
Matt is not a man of small talk. He's straight in. Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. We've got a couple of people saying hello, Lauren and Ryan. I don't know if it's Lauren. I don't know if it's Ryan. I don't know if it's Lauren and Ryan, but they're watching. So it's good to know. That's good to know. Matt, how long did it take you to do Matt with the hair? How long did it take you to do your hair today, bud? Because it's looking very good.
I mean, I've been rocking this hairstyle for so long now. I don't even think about it.
Just do that.
I'm pretty sure it's like a Lego hair, isn't it? You just pick it up and put it on in the morning. You must do.
I hang upside down. I hang upside down like a bat and have to let gravity do its thing.
I like that. I like that a lot. Well, we thought we'd just bring some lightheartedness to people's social media channels because, hey, it's a bit doom and gloomy out there with old Kwasi Kamikaze.
I like that.
Yeah. It's been a bit crazy. Mike, coming to you first of all. How's your week been, bud? Talk to us about property. Fill the world with your knowledge.
It's been a good week in the land of Will and Mike. Had a couple of completions today, which is always good. The best part of the job, as always, handing the keys over. Few difficult transactions, which is always nice to see the backside of. But yeah, we've been really busy actually still. We've still got plenty going on. I don't necessarily think it's slowing down and, dropping off a cliff as the media suggests. They always blow things out of proportion. Albeit that, yes, the market has shifted and, I don't think it's anything new. We've been talking about this on live chats for probably the last 4 or 5 weeks that it's starting to turn. But it certainly hasn't dropped off a cliff in terms of what we've been seeing. I'm nowhere near. It's just a different sort of marketplace than it was 3-4 months ago. That's pretty much all there is to it, in all honesty. I think, it's not going to be an open house where you've got 25 people turning up anymore. It's going to be less people, but they're still going to sell. It's not as if properties aren't coming on and they're not selling.
Absolutely. I think that's a nice way to summarise it. It's hard out there. I mean, as Chris has put in the comments here, it's difficult I'm talking to buyers and sellers and estate agents, actually. Estate agents, whether they're looking to join the Avocado love train or whether they're kind of just estate agents just looking for a bit of communication on what's going on. But it's contradicting out there, isn't it? People not entirely certain where to go. And I think part of the problem, Matt P, is sometimes the media tend to go one direction, and then sometimes our industry tries to go the polar opposite direction. And actually people kind of that are in the middle, aka the public that are thinking of moving, they're like, well, you're over here, what's the reality? So I mean, as Mike said there, it feels just a bit like kind of normal in a strange way, doesn't it, really? The actual property market itself. Are you finding that in Wokingham?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is like the difficulty with the media, as we all know, is that all they want to do is they want to put the frighteners up you, don't they? They just want to talk about the worst thing that could possibly happen, and then it's what it is. Let's look at the pound versus the dollar a few weeks ago, and you're looking at 1.03 or whatever it was. There was absolutely no news about it climbing back up to where it is now, or even the 1.27 that it hit about 3 or 4 days later than that. So they want you to hear the negative part of what's happening. They'll talk about the housing market crash. They'll talk about this. They'll talk about that. Prices dropping by this. Prices dropping by that. Of course, we're seeing it on the front end. And being blunt, Wokingham this week's been busy, been really busy. Got 3 new instructions coming to the market over the next 2 to 3 weeks, which is great. All great houses, all great sellers. Buyers, quite agree with what Mike said a moment ago. The good buyers are going to be out there now because they still need to move. It's not going to be a wants thing at the moment, I don't think. I think it's going to be more of a need. I think people that need to move, family upsizing, still a bit of divorces and all those little bits and pieces happening out there. But the market's still hot, still good. I mean, prices aren't quite as strong. We're still getting a tendency for agents to overvalue to win business, which you need to be really careful of. But generally, it's really good. I'm still in the office. I have been since 9 o'clock this morning, and I'll probably continue to be for another couple of hours yet. So if that tells you anything, it's definitely good.
Matt's busy. Matt with a B. How's Central Reading treating you at the moment? How are you finding? Because Reading's an interesting one because it's a version of a city to where we are in reality. By name or not, it's the biggest location that we kind of operate from. And what conversations and questions are you getting from buyers and sellers? Over the last week, what's people's thoughts and feelings on things?
Yeah, I think probably similar to everyone. There was just a huge amount of nervousness last week with all of the headlines, and people can see a snippet of something on Sky News and be like, "Oh my God, interest rates are going up. What does that mean?" And people kind of default to a worst case scenario. But as we saw with the dollar bouncing up, I think as we will see with interest rates, we've been saying interest rates are going to be going up for ages, haven't we? They're probably never going to be that low again, maybe. So it's like, don't panic. People who are moving because they need to move. I'm seeing more price reductions on the market, but I'm still seeing activity. Things are still selling if it's priced right.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. I think we mentioned a couple of times, if sellers are going to the market at the right price and taking the advice, then you'd like to think that there's a good level of really quality buyers out there. I'm talking to a lot of people that I think with the Queen obviously passing, and then summer holidays, kids went back to school. Then we had this mini budget come into play with, Kwasi Kamikaze. And then we've had all of the stuff that's gone on with the pound versus the dollar. Matt loves that one. He's going to use that one, get it on the back of his hoodie. All of this stuff that's gone on, it's been quite an intense couple of weeks for the property market and the UK. And what's actually happened is people have kind of put off potentially putting the house on the market. And if we find there's less properties coming to the market, we find estate agents out there overvaluing. And if we find estate agents overvaluing, miscommunication, and before we know it, everyone's in a bit of a muddle. So we're here tonight on this conversation to answer any questions that people have got. Any questions at all, we're happy to answer, but also to just give you the raw truth on how we're finding things. And that, as the chaps have just said there, it feels like if you are doing things seriously and you've got wants and needs to move, then everything's okay. It will happen. Unfortunately, though, Mike, it does mean that people are going to have to pay a little bit more on their mortgage, right? Because that's what we're seeing on the rates at the moment. And I guess mortgage advisors are worth their absolute weight in gold for your buyers and sellers at the moment, right?
100%. I think, there was always that, massive need, and we've always pushed speaking to an advisor. Why wouldn't you? Why would you want to do everything yourself? But if there's ever a time to tap into a mortgage advisor's knowledge and understand what works for you, because I think that's what it's going to be coming down to now, is actually planning what your finances are going to look like, what your repayments are going to look like. Especially if you bought, let's say, 2 years ago, and you're coming up to the end of a fixed deal or something. It's a case of, right, how are you going to manage this? Where's it going to leave you in the next few years? I think they are worth their weight in gold, more so than they ever have been. But we would always say to speak to a broker, because they're the best placed person to point you in the right direction, because it's a complete minefield out there. It was when the rates were low anyway, and now they've shifted. There's going to be even more turmoil about, well, is that a good rate? Is that a good deal? Because there's so many little snippets of, you've got a fixed cost for this, or you've got to pay up front for this and that. It's not always the lowest number on the spreadsheet is the best option for someone. So, yeah, it's absolutely imperative that you get that advice before you're going to either buy something, or well in time, 6 months, as most mortgage advisors will say, 6 months prior to your mortgage deal coming up, so that they can advise you and you've got the luxury of a bit of time, because it is going to cost you a bit of money at the moment, for sure.
I'm so glad you said minefield.
It is a minefield. It is a minefield. Well, buying and selling, regardless of the mortgage market, it's a minefield if you don't have the right advice, not only on the mortgage front, but equally if you don't have the right advice from your estate agent, from your solicitor. So if there's ever a time to make sure that you've got that power team that we always talk about, you've really got to make sure you've got a good, solid power team around you. Otherwise, you will find that, it's like a train of dominoes, isn't it? If one goes, the whole lot goes, and then it scuppers the plan. So, yeah, it's definitely worth making sure that you've got the right people around you that can point you in the right direction and make sure you're making the most informed decision before you push the button.
Yeah, good advice like that. Matt, over in Wokingham, what sort of conversations have people had about stamp duty? Because the stamp duty change has kind of gone a little bit under the radar, I guess, really, with everything going on. But the significant changes there and savings for first-time buyers. A lot of people want to buy their first property in Wokingham. More often than not, it ends up being more around second-time buyers potentially that arrive in Wokingham. But what kind of conversations have you had about stamp duty with people? Have people brought it up at all when they're out viewing, or?
It's been a bit of a moot point, actually, because I think as soon as it came in, everything just went upside down on the whole mortgage market, especially with the rates. I've had a couple of conversations with first-time buyers over the past week since it all came in, which they've actually been very responsive to. Their gut feel is that they're going to sit on the fence for a little while and then see what happens with rates. Do I blame them? No. Do I think it's the right thing to do? Probably not either. I think if they're looking to secure a lower rate, probably now's the right time to do it. All of the press leads to it jumping up a little bit towards the start of next year. So if you could secure a rate now, that's probably not the wrong thing to do. The benefit with Wokingham in the area that I cover is that your 2-bedroom houses, and let's look at Montague Park, for example, 2-bedroom houses in Montague Park are best part of £400,000 now, and then they get the full stamp duty relief off that. So it's a good time to those people that are looking to try and move up on from their 2 beds to 3 beds. It's a good time to look to try and take advantage of that, because there's a lot of really good buyers out there that have been saving a lot of money over the past couple of years to get themselves into this position to be able to buy. And now they've actually been able to put a little bit more down on their mortgage because they don't need to offset the difference of this stamp duty.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. And it's interesting that not a lot of chatter around the stamp duty holiday as well, because I think for certain first-time buyers, depending on what price they're buying, they can save the best part of £11,000. So, that's a fair old chunk. Matt B, in Reading, or just general conversations, Sanjay's put in here, is there value on being a first-time buyer at the moment? I wrote a blog about 8 months ago which said cash is no longer king. And at that moment, it was all about the flexible buyer, the buyer that was prepared to wait for you to go out and find. because that was the market we were in. They had more power than a cash buyer. It was a flexible buyer. Have the roles reversed, and is cash buyer now the highest profile of buyer, would you say? And if you had sellers, I guess, would you advise, or would you be having conversations about them maybe taking a slightly lower offer to secure a buyer?
Yeah, I think it has changed versus when that blog was written. Perhaps I think when it's all about certainty, right? So if you want a flexible buy, you want some certainty that you've got some leeway to find the right place. Whereas if the mortgage market is in chaos and the person who knew they could get a mortgage at X rate last week all of a sudden can't, that's not the certainty you want for your move. So therefore, naturally cash buyers are going to be more attractive so long as it maps to the timeline the client's working with. So yeah, I do think that's shifted in terms of cash buyers being more attractive.
What percentage of buyers do you feel you talk to that are cash buyers at the moment? Are they out in the woodwork, or are they not there? What's...
Yeah, I mean, it's not a lot, is it, really, realistically, for any of us, I don't think. And especially with, rates are going up, but it's not like they're 10%, it's still in the region of, can we quite say cheap money? I mean, it's not cheap money anymore, but it's still historically low, right?
Okay. And I must say, your camera quality, Matt, is phenomenal tonight. Very, very high quality.
This is me in 1080p.
Yeah, it's very nice to see. Very nice on the eyes. And I love your dressing table for how you do your hair in the background there with the lights.
That's all the secret products in the background. Unlabeled jars.
I should disclaimer this is not my beauty station. Although I probably need it more than the lady who uses it does, but that's another story.
You look like you're filming from your own little kind of showroom in the back of the X Factor show or something. It's really impressive.
He's going on stage after this, I've heard.
Well, I think we need to get some comments on this chat for how Mike and Matt can spice up their backgrounds. Because, I mean, Ian, you're doing okay with, there's something going on.
I love it how you changed the conversation away from you and your...
Right.
Hey, Matt, maybe I'll just hold this up behind my head for the entire time.
Yeah,
it's a start.
Because I can kind of do that. I mean, it might look like someone's thrown a slip through my head, but yeah, maybe not.
Right, let's get to the punch point. If you go into asktheaudience.co.uk, .com, you're going to answer the audience, answer the public. That's the website I'm looking for. I'm back in the game. And if you search in UK property, the most asked question into Google in the UK at the moment is around this phrase: will the property market crash? Is the property market about to crash? Are house prices about to crash, etc., etc.? That's the most typed in thing in Google at the moment that relates to property. So if that's the question people are asking, shall we answer it? We are not... we're not in the future, so we don't know the answer, but we're going to give our opinion on it from years of property experience between all of us here. So, Mike, going to you first, you don't have to put your estate agency spin on this. It's a live chat, not going to hold you to it, although I will download it, record it, and play it if you get it really wrong.
I was hoping you wouldn't come to me first, to be honest. I think you should go to Matt, because then I can pick and choose the good bits from his bit.
I'm going to stay with you, just in case your laptop packs up on us at any
Highly
moment.
likely.
Oh, it sounds like it's just about to go home, Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's very nice and toasty in here now, so it's all good.
Good. Well, it serves its purpose then. So, what do you think? And when we say crash, let's define crash. Okay. So, do you think in 2023, based on what's going on at the moment, the conversations we're having, the public, the media, do you think we're going to see a crash? And if there is a crash, what do you define as a crash? And if you don't think it's going to crash, what do you think is going to happen? Crowthorne, Sandhurst, Finchampstead, that sort of area.
In our area, I think no is the short answer. I don't think it will. If it is going to crash, I don't think it's going to be next year. That's for certain. I mean, we're quite fortunate in the area that we cover, obviously Crowthorne, Sandhurst and Finch, that it's quite an affluent area and there is quite a bit of money around and lots of people have, relatively small mortgages, if you like. So, that might play into it. But I don't think that it will crash, purely on the basis that I don't think that all the parts that make up a crash will be there, if that makes sense. So, the banks are way more regulated than they ever have been in terms of what they can and can't do and things like that. So I can't see that it's going to drop off a cliff. It might turn, and people might go, oh, it's turned so much that we haven't seen that recently. And people might classify that as a crash. But a crash for me is where it all drops off and you've got repossessions left, right, and centre. That's the definition for me, if we're talking about an actual crash. And I don't think that will happen. I think there will be one or two which potentially, people do fall into financial difficulty, regardless of whether or not the market's good or bad. That's just a fact. But I don't think it will fall off a cliff. There may be a slightly higher number of people that perhaps haven't budgeted, properly and maybe unable to continue living in that house that they bought, or whatever the case is, and may have to take a little bit less depending on what happens with prices. But I can't see it just dropping off a cliff and nothing selling, because ultimately, regardless of what's happening in the marketplace at the moment or what will happen, I think it's going to take a long time for that imbalance of property versus people to buy them. I think it's still going to take a long time for that to swing the other way. There's still a lot of people that want to move house. There's still a lot of people that want to get on the property ladder. There's now a great incentive for people, for first-time buyers, to buy without having to part ways with that extra bit of money that they had to do for stamp duty. So that demand's not just going to fall away in the next 6 months, 12 months. It will still be there. It will just be a case of maybe the volume of transactions slows down a little bit. But I don't think it's going to crash. I don't think we'll be shutting the doors anytime soon.
I like that. I'm interested to know what percentage you think the market will change next year. Putting you on the spot.
I mean, if you're going to generalize the whole thing, maybe into double digits, maybe, but I don't think anything more than that, if I'm honest. I mean, I think it almost works in pockets, doesn't it? Maybe some of the higher end properties, or, £600,000-700,000 plus, maybe they'll take a bit more of the brunt, where, if you're getting more of a mortgage, then, actually you are going to be paying more because the percentage is higher. But the bread and butter stuff that we call, like, your 2-3 bedroom houses, which always churn over, I don't think they're going to take much of a hit, really, because they're the things where people typically either move up from their first time purchase to, which is inevitable after the probably 2-3 years, maybe 4. And equally, you're going to have first time buyers, which are then buying those properties that they're moving from. And equally, you're going to have people that are downsizing to those houses. I think it's more going to be that top end that's going to take more of a hit, to be quite honest, because that was where the lull of properties was. When we were all saying, what's the properties to have now, when people couldn't find, traditionally it was people that were trying to find bigger houses to move to. That's where all the prices were going up crazy, because there was no choice, was there? If you wanted a 4 or 5 bed detached in and around Wokingham, or any of our patches, to be honest, there wasn't much choice. So people could put them on the market for pretty much whatever they wanted within reason. Well, I think they're going to take the biggest slump, because they're the ones that are going to be coming back to more normal prices now.
Yeah. Okay. Matt, what do you think? Matt P, if I come to you first, I'll keep that order going round. The title there is, will the property market crash? And I guess if we, a lot of the property experts, media property experts at the moment are going on, and they're kind of saying their expectations for next year is a 10% price drop, which seems like a bit of a guesstimate random number. And what we do know normally with these expert forecasts, 95% of the time they're absolutely wrong. So, I mean, I worked in 2008 in that market, and the end of the year Nationwide reported that 15.9% was the total drop. That was a recession, an economic financial crisis. People were losing their jobs and not able to kind of, afford X, Y, and Z. We're not in that world at the moment. So what's your expectations for the market? Do you think it will crash?
Well, we're not in a Don't get me wrong, the global economy isn't wonderful, but we're not in a case where we've got the banks ripping each other off. They actually want to still lend to each other. They still want to lend money. They're just unsure at the moment as to what percentage to lend it at. Do I think there's going to be a massive crash? No. Do I think there's going to be some alignment? Yes, totally. I think some properties over the past year, 2 years, 3 years have bucked the trend on value increases. Based on what Mike said a moment ago with regards to properties, bigger properties being so much in demand, they've probably sold at prices which were possibly too much, maybe. I don't think, however, that you'll see a drastic change. I really don't. I've worked in the same market as you did, Ian, for all those years back then. And we look at Wokingham specifically, because I think it was a market we were both working in together at a similar time. And whilst you saw some change, it wasn't catastrophic. And I don't think you saw a lot of properties not sell because the price was wrong. It just got to a new point. What we've got to remember is that people that are selling a house at 300,000 looking to upsize, even if they were to drop by 5%, they're changing their price by £15,000 to achieve a sale. They're now going to be buying on at 5% less on 40 grand, which means that 400 grand, which means that they're going to be saving 20 grand off theirs. And it likewise, as the scale goes up, there will always be people at the higher end of the market where Wokingham has a lot of properties that are unencumbered. There's no mortgage on them in the slightest. There is always going to be homes that are big out there where they can't be managed anymore. Gardens are too big. It doesn't stop the market from moving. So I don't see a crash. I see alignment, certainly a drop, certainly. To what extent, I don't know. But I don't think that should put people off wanting to try and move at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, in 2008, still a lot of people moved. You know, it was
exactly right.
It wasn't like the market shut down and stopped. It was still happening. And
exactly.
Yeah, it's just going to be very different to what we've seen in the last 2 years. And some people will be happy with that because there'll be less panic and there'll be more time and people can analyse things and be more thorough. And that's potentially what we'll see. What about Reading, Matt? What do you think in Reading? You know, we've got town centre apartments, you've got blue chip companies, you've got the hustle and bustle, you know, the new train station there with amazing connector routes. Prices in Reading didn't climb as high over the last 10 years as some of its neighbouring areas, but it did have a boom and a little bit of a launch when the Oracle came into play and maybe had that boom a little bit earlier. But what's your expectations for next year?
I think it's impossible to say, right? Where's the crystal ball? And anyone who forecasts what's going to happen is usually wrong. But it's just not going to crash. I just can't see, unless, you know, we still don't have enough homes being built. And as we all know, the demand is there when we put a property on the market for the right price. So it's not crashing. That's my crystal ball verdict. And I think I'm glad you mentioned the 15% number in 2008, because I couldn't remember what that was. And I think we could all agree that's quite an extreme number. But then if we had a 20% correction tomorrow, say, or next month, that would just take us back to where prices were in 2020 when the first lockdown happened. So it's like, you know, we'd have to have a pretty huge turn of events in the global market for something like that to happen. And people are always going to want to own a house.
I think my expectations are that people will find that all of this noise that's going on in the media will be fixed before the end of the year. Not fixed in terms of there won't be problems, but I think the issue at the moment is people don't really know where they stand. And I think people will have more of a lay of the land. I know the next kind of milestone budget is booked in for November. It's only next month. There's talk it might come forward. We don't really know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But I think what we will see is, much like we've all mentioned, interest rates are going to be higher. And maybe that's for the next 18 months, 2 years, I don't know. The title of this live chat was that yesterday HSBC reduced all of their mortgage products, or most of their mortgage products, marginally, but it was still almost a stake in the ground to say, you know, that's where we are. We want to be competitive in this market and we want to lend. So we don't know what's coming next year. I mean, we did at the start of January, we did all go on record when we were doing these live chats, and the average came out as around 7, 8 or 9% growth in 2022. And it looks like it's probably going to be around that 7 or 8% growth in 2022. So we were more or less right there. And I think what we might see is next year, from a land registry record perspective, I think we might see a UK price change somewhere around 6 or 7%, which will just kind of almost counterbalance out this year, is what my expectation would be. But I do think when we look at prices around the home counties where we're based, Reading, Wokingham, Crowthorne, Sandhurst, you know, Camberley, Bracknell, High Wycombe, all of these areas where we've kind of got Avocado agents, we're not correlated with what goes on with the northern market and the London market. We're kind of in our own little microclimate. And if the UK prices are climbing by 8% on average, it normally means our area is growing a little bit quicker, and the northern market's not quite as fast, and London hasn't grown anywhere near as fast as the home counties over the last 2 years. And when the prices are coming down rapidly in Wales and Northern and Midlands, and sometimes in London, like before COVID, well, the home counties, actually, they're not coming down quite as fast. So we're a microclimate, and that's why it's good to do these kind of niche market updates, because that's my feelings on it. It's up to us to give our local communities good updates on what's happening. So, Mike, any little secret squirrel instructions coming up in the next up till Halloween?
Oh, a lot of planning going on there. We've definitely got a few things in the pipeline for sure. Probably more that, as we said earlier, or I called it, the bread and butter stuff. Some really nice 2 and 3 bedroom houses coming up around Finch, which I think will get a lot of interest. Hopefully now with the stamp duty incentive for first time buyers, there's going to be no stamp duty payable on that sort of stuff. So, but yeah, I know Mr. Baggs has got a few irons in the fire as well at the moment. So, yeah, we'll have to see. He's a man of mystery, though. He only tells me what's going on last minute, sends me the address and where to bring the camera gear. But yeah, we've got a couple of nice 2 bedrooms coming on. One in Sandhurst and one in Finch in the next couple of weeks. So keep your eyes on the beat portals. Love
that. Matt, what about yourself? You said you got a few bits in Wokingham sort of bubbling at the moment. Anything you can let us know?
Yeah, I've just taken instructions on a great 1-bedroom flat in Shoot End, basically town centre, right by the council offices. So stone's throw to the station and into town, priced at £230,000. It's got its own little patio area, got car parking space, which you don't often find in Wokingham town centre. So that's going to be coming on. That'll be available in the next couple of weeks. Boring slightly out of patch, but only because it's through a client of mine that I've sold a house to, which he's given me instructions last night on a fantastic 4-bedroom detached property in Early, which will be going live in the next couple of weeks, which has got massive opportunity for improvement. And there's a couple of other sneaky little bits and pieces that will be coming my way in the next couple of weeks. So you have to wait for those.
Beat the portals, get on the Instagram, get on the Facebook, check them out. And obviously the one in Shoot End at 230, no tax payable, no stamp duty.
Exactly. Exactly that, and being offered with no chain as well, so you can be in there relatively quickly.
That is the pad. Walking distance into the pubs and restaurants of Wokingham. That's the place to be.
British stumbling distance.
Yeah.
Not even stumbling distance, falling distance. You literally just.
You're just there. They're in your door.
Yeah.
Matt, what about yourself? Anything on the bubble over in Reading? Any little cookies you can tell us about?
Yeah, I got a couple of 3-bedroom houses coming up in the next week or so. And 3-bedroom houses, I think, is what the market still really wants and needs right now. So looking forward to those. One's quite a modern build, 3-bedroom townhouse just off the Oxford Road in Reading. And then the other is a 3-bed semi in Woodley, so a little bit out of patch for me, but that one needs some love and care. So I'm quite excited about selling that and what the new buyer might look to do with it. So yeah, those two are coming up in the next couple of weeks.
What sort of price is the one in Woodley, the doer upper?
400k. Yeah, but it's it's got the potential to be the forever home with all the bells and whistles.
Sounds good. Love that. Chaps, very good educational chat this evening. Honest, raw. We put our neck on the line with what we think's happening next year, where we're at the moment. There's no agenda. We're not selling to anyone here. We're just giving what we think's going on. Just giving our time for 35 minutes for people to watch us and get a good understanding of what we think's happening at the moment. And that's the beauty of what we do. There is no BS when it comes to Avocado. We just talk facts. So until next Thursday at 6 p.m, get your questions in then. We'll be live. And as the guys have said, they've got listings coming on, market updates. Follow the socials. That's where we're updating you daily. And of course, if anyone needs us, just drop us a DM and we're happy to answer any questions as well. Have a good rest of the evening, guys.